Hey everyone, welcome. My name is Dayna Schmidt-Johnson. I'm the community manager of Ritual Society, as well as the house astrologer. Today, we are going to be talking about herbalism, plants, herbs, how to incorporate them into your practice, and most importantly, how not to kill them, because I need that information personally. Since I am a plant's worst nightmare, we have brought in certified herbalist Molly McClellan to share her secrets. Welcome, Molly. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Hi, Dana. Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us a little bit more about who you are, what you do.
Sure. So, obviously, my name is Molly McClellan, and I am a certified herbalist. I'm also an energy worker and a witch. I'm also currently working towards a certification to become a nature and forest therapy guide, which is super exciting and plant and herbalism adjacent. I teach classes, I make products, I offer consultations through my business, Vermilion Herbals, and I do so many other things, but those are kind of like really what I do in regards to herbalism and plants.
Amazing. You're really all over the board when it comes to plant work. Awesome. How did you get started in all of this, and how long have you been doing it? Your whole life, essentially? We're all born with plants around us, right?
Right, right. Well, so plants and nature have always really been a big part of who I am. Even if in some points of my life I wasn't super connected to it or wasn't really kind of like in my sphere or really kind of in my knowing. I was always that kid who was like staying out late in the woods, mixing up magical potions with whatever I found and like trash can lids because I'm classy like that. You could find me just laying out in the middle of a meadow or in the forest. So I've always really felt most at home out in nature. I grew up camping with a lot of nature experiences, so that could also have something to do with it. But what really kind of sparked this for me is I had just a friend say, hey, I think that you would really be interested in herbalism. And I kind of thought about it because I was like, well, I like nature and I like herbs, but kind of as a like recovering Gen X goth, I'm loath to be like, I really want to help people, but I really do. And so it really kind of was like, well, this is a different way for me to connect with nature in a different way. I was always very experiential, but I didn't kind of learn what anything was. I just kind of hung out with it. And so basically I took some community classes that really started the spark. Then I, of course, went into full education and became certified. And then it just kind of has snowballed into that. I really love crafting blends for people, coming up with protocols for people. And so, yeah, I took some classes and the rest is history. And that was, I've been in nature my whole life, but I started really officially becoming dedicated in about 2012. And the rest is history. So here we are.
Wow. And you've been doing it ever since. That's really amazing.
Yeah.
There's so much to know about plants and herbs. And so having been studying it your whole life is very helpful in all of that. But, as a person who has trouble even keeping them alive, what suggestions do you kind of have for not just caring for plants, but connecting better to them?
Sure. Well, Dana. So an interesting thing you'll find out about a lot of herbalists is just because we know what to do with the herbs doesn't necessarily mean we know how to keep them alive.
I'm glad I'm not the only one,
So herbalist sometimes gets mistaken or people think gardener and herbalist are synonymous, but that's not the case. We're really good at working with them when they're dead. Because a lot of times they'll be dried and taken care of. Obviously there's lots of fresh plant preparations. I'm not knocking that. But what I do is I actually have an app called Planta. And it's a free app and it tells you what you can do, where you put your plants, when to water them. It takes and accounts for your weather. So that's mostly how I've turned my black thumb into a green thumb, or more of a like brown green thumb, because traditionally I kill my plants because I love them too much with water. So that is kind of how I've personally kept my indoor plants alive, you know, and just kind of really looking at them, kind of seeing how they react, and kind of just kind of keeping an eye on them like children. Outdoor plants, it's kind of like Thunderdome out there. So like whatever thrives out there is thriving. Right now, the mugwort is living its best life, as well as my stinging nettle. So, but I typically will pick plants that I know that can survive me, that are a little bit hardy, that aren't super finicky, that need misting or anything like that. So definitely start with like hardier plants that, because, you know, like we all know our personal tendencies. Like, do we have time every single day? Do we want something that only needs to be watered once a week? And so really kind of going with that and then taking it from there. But Planta has saved my bacon many times. But yeah, I accidentally like to drown my plants with too much water, love. As far as connecting with them, a really easy way, and is really accessible for just about anyone, is what is referred to as a plant sit. And it's exactly what it sounds like. You are taking a moment to sit down with a plant and be with it. And I don't want to say commune with it, but be, you know, in connection with it. Sometimes people call this like plant meditation, but plants, you know, like we think of plants kind of as a monolith, like we have the nettles and we have the pines and we have this. But if you think about it, just like humans, they're individual beings, right? And so what connection you might have with one specific plant, you might not have with the other of the same genus and species, because it's its own plant, right? It's got its own root system, its own leaves, different flowers. And so I like to sit with an individual plant and just sit there and, you know, whether you're more of a verbal talker, you know, talk to the plant, or just sit there and kind of be in the plant's presence and really just have a conversation with it and see what it has to say. I really firmly believe that, like, you know, a lot of times we don't really know where we got some of this knowledge pre, you know, scientific method times, right? How did native peoples know what these plants would do? Obviously, there's definitely some trial and error, but there was a bigger connection with the world, and we call it the more than human world, or nature spirits. And I think a lot of it is because people took the time to sit down and really converse with them, to ask them what they were for and how they can help and how they wanted to be of service, or not, because some of them are sassy, like anything. Any people, some people are sassy. But yeah, another thing I do that might also help with the black thumb turning into a little green is I talk to my plants, I sing to my plants. Sometimes if I'm feeling sassy around the house, I'll dance to my plants. So like I really create like a bond with them, instead of just be like, this is my plant and I need to keep it alive kind of thing. I do like a couple prong approach of like trying to really make sure its needs are met with like watering properly and sunlight proper, and then like, you know, talk to it like it's my friend.
So you're really getting intimate then with your plants in that way.
Yeah.
Which is not, I think, how most people think of plants. You put your plant on the shelf and you tend to it, but being able to have almost like a two-way conversation then with your plant and allow it to tell you what it needs to.
Yeah.
And how it's going to help you. Because like you said, you work mostly with dead plants. So then you're drying them, you're taking them from, you know, the growth stage to the usefulness for human stage, right? That is very different.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, each plant of course has its like, you know, and then you go down the rabbit hole of like herbalism, like which one's better fresh versus which one's better, you know, dried and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, I try to be in community versus commodity. which is hard, you know, in a society that's very much a commodity society. And even when the plants are dried, they still have a spirit, like, you know, like there's still that vital energy in there because they have these constituents and they have all of these benefits. You know, it's just different. But yeah, it just, you know, it is a living being, you know, and how do we take care of other living beings? How do we take care of our dogs, our birds, our human children? Like, you know, and like you said, tend, like if you think about the definition of tend, it's not just like water, like it could be a wide variety of things.
Yeah. And, you know, part of that is the cyclicalness of the world that we live in, right? These plants can be very dependent on seasons. Are there certain herbs that we should work with at certain times of year because of that?
Well, I'm going to give you an answer that I have known, that I've come to know and love, called a permaculture answer. So I also am into permaculture. I've been trained in some permaculture. And so their answer is always, it depends. And so what I mean by that is, so it depends on your location, what's growing near you, getting really kind of into what your bioregion has and your seasons. For example, like my seasons in Colorado and the plants that live here are going to be wildly different than, say, Florida, where everything's green all year round. And so you have access to everything all year round. You know, so a good place to start is kind of really looking for things that are more like bioregional as far as like what plants are in your area, and then getting to know the season of the plant, right? You have the different seasons where they are rooting up and sprouting, then they'll get flowers, some of them will get their version of fruit, you know, and then, you know, like, are the roots something that you want to look at? Are you trying to harvest the leaves? And kind of like, so less about cycles of what we think of as a traditional, you know, summer, spring, winter, fall, which can correspond to, of course, different plants. But I look at it as this in the cycle of the plant, because not everything is blooming at the same time. Not everything is growing at the same time. In Colorado, like in the wintertime, we've got evergreens like, and snow and brown things. And so things that aren't necessarily going to, you know, I don't want to say be useful, but like it's not a lot, you know. You know, the other thing is, you know, so for example, like kind of circling back to that bioregion, Michael Moore, not the filmmaker, but he was, excuse me, a herbalist and teacher, and he wrote a bunch of books based by different regions. So I have one here called Medicinal Plants of the Mountain West. And so he has a whole different regions by book to book of kind of like what's in your area, what they are, what they do, what they look like, kind of when to harvest them, some pictures. And so it's really nice because then you can know, kind of based about what's around you, kind of what the cycle is from a certain plant, and then kind of shift it that way. You know, you always want to kind of harvest and work with plants kind of when they're in their prime, right? Because we're looking for that vitality, especially if you're using it for medicine making. So, you know, obviously, if you're looking for the leaves and the flowers, that's going to be harvested at a different time versus berries. So, like generally in spring, that's when that happens. Berries can be anywhere between summer and fall, depending on where you're living, and then roots sometimes between fall and winter. Energy goes back into the ground and the roots are then more powerful that way. You know, you can really go down a rabbit hole and go into biodynamics, and that's kind of like when the moon phases are versus like full moon versus new moon, and kind of like what energetics are in plants that way. always indigenous sources are always the best if you can find them written in a book. They can be tricky to find because, of course, that's the older knowledge of kind of the people that were here, at least, in the States before us. And so there's a lot of wisdom in that. And then, of course, when you go out there, you really want to make sure that if you're not, of course, growing it yourself, that you know what you're actually harvesting. Because, and this is like my standard answer, anybody asks me if this mushroom is edible, my response is everything's edible at least once, And so it's cheeky, but it's true. Like you can eat it one time, whether or not you'll be able to eat it again. But like knowing your area, if it's sprayed, if it's not sprayed, what's in it, especially like if you're on certain forests, like sometimes it's illegal to gather stuff. So it just depends on where you're at, kind of where you're getting your herbs from. Botany in a Day is a really nice book. This is called An Herbal Field Guide to Plant Families of North America. So this is North American specific, but it goes into detail on it's what's referred to in herbalism as key out plants. And so based on kind of like how many leaves it has and what shape they are and so on and so forth, you can kind of figure out what plants are there. So that one's a cool one to have. And then also just being mindful, especially if you're out in the nature and you're not in your backyard, really make sure, especially like if you're going for things like berries in the fall, make sure you leave enough. I mean, there's all sorts of foraging rules and that sort of thing, but you want to always make sure that, other than, of course, plant ID, make sure that you're leaving enough, not taking a ton of it, just a little bit of what you need, and make sure that, especially like when it comes to like berries and that sort of thing, that you're leaving enough for the creatures that are living on that land so they don't starve through the wintertime. So just kind of some ethics around that. But that's kind of my long winding answer as far as kind of like working with seasons. I think of it more of the season of the individual plant versus the season as a whole, because everybody comes from different bioregions. And so, kind of leaning towards the plant to tell you a little bit more about it versus, this is winter, this is fall, this is spring.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Living in Chicago, very much on the seasons, right? So it's very dependent on that. But like you said, somewhere further south is not going to have that. Yeah, and they can go foraging year round. So it's very different. So then once we get into the world of the herbs, the tinctures, the mixes, and those kinds of things, which I personally have never made one. And I would guess a lot of people haven't either, but I will go to a store and buy them. How do we know when we're looking at these different mixtures and things, tinctures and, blends, how can we tell if something is going to be right for us?
Great question. And I'm sorry, you're going to get another permaculture answer, but it depends. So, you kind of look at like, what are you trying to accomplish? Is there a root cause for what you're trying to deal with? Or is it just a symptom of a deeper issue? Are you looking to kind of like, for example, a headache, right? You want the pain to go away, but why do you have that pain? Are you just going to treat the pain, or are you going to treat the cause as to why the pain is there? So it really depends on kind of like what your end goal is. Are you treating the root? As herbalists, we always go for the root cause. That way you get, relief across the board. But, other things, are you allergic to any of the herbs? Are you on any medications? A lot of herbs actually contraindicate with medications, and there's a lot of people on medications these days. Medications are great. They're, like I'm a firm believer that, there are some things that herbs are really appropriate for, and then there's other things that more modern medicine are more equipped to deal with. But a lot of herbs interact with medications. So that's something to make sure that if you're on any medications, that herb isn't going to mess with your medications. A lot of people don't think about that because they're like, well, herbs are natural, it's fine. I see you shaking your head. Yeah, a lot of modern medicines, the root of those are herbal therapies. And so they've taken them and done what they will with them. But like, some herbs can block the intake of medications into the system. Some of them can power up the medication. So you're either getting not enough of your dosage, or it's potentiating it to where you're getting way more milligrams than you think you are. So you always want to kind of research them before you try them. I really love this book here, the Herbal Vademecum. This is by, what is his name? Gasmend Skarandi. I am butchering that, I assure you. But so basically this is something that tells you like the common name of the herb, kind of what parts you use, what it's used for, if it's used internally or externally, any issues that it may have, like if you should use it in pregnancy or not use it in pregnancy. So it's a nice, really accessible book to kind of research, especially if you're interested in herbs or making stuff. As a general rule, teas are really great for people who want something that's more what we refer to as tonic or nourishing for the system. Something that is kind of, I think of it as like crock pot, like it's a low and slow, very nurturing, something that's not really acute or something that you need in the immediate moment, like a splitting headache. I would go for something more of a tincture, something that's faster acting in the blood system. It's more concentrated. You use teas for longer periods of time for support. You use tinctures for more acute and immediate situations. If you're unsure, the best course, of course, is to not take it. Trust your intuition on that. If you need help, you can always, or you're looking for protocols, you can always reach out to a local herbalist and they can kind of help you navigate it as well and come up with a protocol. You can do a lot of research yourself, and you can do a lot of, like advocating for yourself, especially with herbs, but you do just want to make sure that you're being intelligent about it. Making sure that, the places that you're getting the herbs from are quality, that they have best practices, that they are not over harvesting endangered plants just because you can doesn't mean you should, kind of thing. But yeah, just kind of making sure that you're going with reputable companies as well. Does that help answer that? Do you have any further questions on that?
No, it absolutely does. I think, speaking to an herbalist who would be able to maybe help you connect some dots in whatever it is that you're, like you said, you're trying to heal or, alleviate, makes a lot of sense. And I think, I personally have really only gone down the road of nice to haves. Like you said, like a tea is like more of a, something that helps kind of on a day-to-day basis. But, I haven't had like one symptom that I'm trying to, even like you said, going further into that and not just getting rid of the symptom, but the cause of it. That's so important. Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of modern medicine fails, is modern medicine is designed to really treat the immediate thing in front and not really dive deeper into why you're experiencing it. So that's one of the things that I really like about herbalism, is there's kind of like this sleuthness to it of, why are you experiencing this? And, going into like full health history and like just really kind of seeing what the trigger is.
Yeah, the deeper cause. It's almost, saying plant therapy in this situation really kind of makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
So let's say that, someone wants to maybe dry their own flowers or herbs and really wants to kind of get started in this world. Do you have any good tips for someone just kind of tinkering around?
Yeah. I actually, this interview should be called, I have a book for that. So I have a book for that. This is hands down my favorite book for all of that. So this is called The Herbal Medicine Maker's Handbook, a home manual, by James Green, herbalist. He also actually, which is really lovely, he has a book. He has many books. But this is going to be great because it has tips for harvesting, drying, garbling, which is a term that you use to get berries off of things. It talks about all the different types of medicine making that you can do with herbs, from tinctures to teas to oils to salves. And it's got almost every single herbal preparation I can think of. And it's written in a very easy to understand way. And it's not like, sometimes you'll get like herbalist books that are like real heady and very like gets kind of tripped up in the jargon. But so yeah, it's really great. It's an affordable book. And I mean, I've had that thing for forever. And, you know, even though I have training in that, I still go back to that book. He also talks about sample herbs you can use, kind of a little couple of recipes you can play with depending on what you're looking for. So it's really, really nice. You know, there's a lot of community herbalists out there that teach classes. So you can take like a quick class on making a salve or making a tea. And usually what they'll do is they'll kind of tell you about a couple different herbs and what they do and why you would put them in a tea, for example, and how to blend them. And then if they're really lovely, then they'll let you like make your own blend so you can like have that experience as well, that DIY. As far as like harvesting and drying, of course, kind of circling back to kind of knowing the plant, knowing what you're looking for that plant for. So example, mullein is, so you'll see it, I don't know if y'all have it in Chicago, but in Colorado, they're considered a invasive weed. And we all know a weed is just a displaced herb in its wrong house. But you'll see it's got these fuzzy leaves and a rosette, and then it has this huge stalk, and then it has yellow flowers on it. A lot of times people will use the dry ones and make witches' torches out of them. Well, they'll dip them in wax and then you can light them and they'll make witches' torches out of them. And so, for example, every single part of this plant is used in herbalism, but each part is used for different body systems. So the roots are used for urinary. The leaves are good for the lungs, and the flowers are good for ear oil. So like obviously, like depending on what part of it you want, you know, like the root, you're going to want to look for in the fall time when all the energies drop down. The leaves, of course, when they're beautiful and vibrant. And then the flowers, you kind of want to catch it fast because those flowers like bloom and then they're gone. So, so really determining what part of the plant you want and then determining when you want to harvest it. And then I like to use drying racks. An easy thing that you can do is take like an old picture frame that you get from the thrift store and get some like, what is that called? Screen, like we do screen doors and stuff, and like staple it to it. And then you can just lay out your herbs and dry them there. So the air is getting the top and the bottom. Because if you'll see, like I've got like herbs bundle back there. If you're in like I'm in a really arid climate, like there's little to no humidity here. So drying stuff like that isn't a problem for us. But if you're in some place that has more humidity, which I think you are, Florida, let's think of Florida. If you keep your herbs stuck together in a bundle like you see in like Practical Magic and all of that, they will mold because they're all touching together and then they're all gonna like decomp and it's just gonna be slimy and gross. So you wanna kind of lay that out. And then you're gonna wanna store it in an airtight container, away from light and heat. The biggest mistake anybody makes is putting their spice rack above the stove because it kills them all. Because spices are herbs too. So, but yeah, again, making sure that you know where you're getting them from, that they're not sprayed, that a dog has not peed on them on a walk, that sort of thing, again, that, getting one of those books that will help you identify kind of what it is and what you want, will help you kind of then determine when you want to harvest it. But yeah, I really, really love that medicine maker book. Local herbalists are great for community classes, and just really knowing what you want to dry and then dry it. Or you could, take it from the verse, be like, oh, I have this in my garden. What does it do? Let me look it up. Let me see when I should harvest it, and go from there too. So you can take it from either angle of like, what do I have on hand? Or, what would I like to grow or go out and get?
Amazing. That's just like so much knowledge right there of even just like the idea of like, hey, I would need to spread my herbs out to dry, whereas you could do them in a bundle. It makes so much sense, because the worst thing you could do then is consume something with mold on it, right? Like that's
yeah. You're like, here I'm doing this nice respiratory herb, but also molded. No.
So tragic in the end. Feel like that's a rookie mistake I would make. So yeah, that's that's just a really good basic tip right there for drying things. Absolutely. So I gotta ask, what's your favorite plant? And then what's your favorite plant to work with if it's not the same?
Well, so this is like asking a parent like what their favorite child is, like which one they love. I can say currently, I've been working a lot with stinging nettle. Again, a lot of herbalists use things that people would consider weeds. But they're resilient for a reason. Dandelions, you can use every part of that plant. Stinging nettle's amazing. You want to dry it and you want to harvest it with gloves because it will bite you. The stinging is for real. But it's super well-rounded because it's one of the best nutritional plants out there that you can make a tea out of. So it's high in vitamins and minerals. It's got protein in there. Like, it's amazing. Like, it's almost like nature's multivitamin a little bit. Depending on how long you brew it, it can be an acquired taste. It has, like, when you brew it, it does taste, it has a little smell of seaweed, but it doesn't necessarily taste it. It tastes very green. And so when you dry that, a lot of times when you dry herbs, what happens is the herbal constituents, or what is kind of like the chemical compounds in there that kind of make the herb and what they do. When you dry the herb, and this is one of the reasons why we use dry herbs more often than not, is it will take and concentrate those within the plant. And so when you make a tea out of it, it releases all of that into the water. And you're getting this beautiful, very nutritious, delicious tea. So it's really great. It's a daily drinker that you can do. If you're looking for another way to kind of get some vitamins and minerals in there. I'm also right now, because I'm doing all of that coursework for nature and forest therapy guide training, and I'm in the forest a lot. Pine needles and pine needle tea is also really delicious. It's high in vitamin C. It's got this little citrusy taste to it. So that's been a new one that I've been playing with. It's super fun. And then a plant that I have had like a consistent loving relationship with is a plant called lady's mantle. And it's got this little umbrella-like leaf, and it's so soft and so fuzzy. And there's like a lot of like alchemy lore with this plant. Like in the morning, if you have any humidity at all, like there'll be a little drop of dew inside of it. And people used to say, like, if you would take the dew and put it on your skin, then you would be blessed with beauty. I don't know, I just really love this plant. It's delicious. It's great for a lot of people who have uteruses. It can be helpful for a lot of those type of complaints, depending on what you're looking at. But it's just so sweet, and I love it so much. And I grow it and I don't harvest it. I just grow it to grow it and have it in my garden. And we have a little discussion and I pet the leaves and I say hi to it. And yeah, so a couple. Couple
Yeah.
plants. Those are the plants of the moment.
I
It's
hear
like the
you.
special
Like,
of the day.
right, right. How do you choose? There are so many, and you're out in nature all the time, probably like taking on one more thing and learning, oh, here's a new thing to learn about, right? Because I'm sure the knowledge just continues to expand.
It's an addiction. Yeah, you're like the invention of plant identifying apps is so good. So like I'll be like, what's this? What's this? Like my partner doesn't come with me on walks anymore because he can't with my stopping every 3 seconds and being like taking my phone out and trying to ID it. And then like I'll take it and then I'll go back to like my botany in a day book to make sure like I know what it is. Because like plant apps are great, but sometimes they may or may not be accurate. But like I'm just like, ooh, who are you? Who are you? What's your name? Who are you? Who are you? So
And then spending all that time in the forest has to be really invigorating on that level.
yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, Molly, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah,
Um,
you're welcome.
we're thrilled to have you as our September teacher in the Ritual Society. Hooray, hooray. So we're going
I'm
to
so
learn
excited.
even more than all of this, go on a little bit of a deep dive with plants.
Mhm.
And in the meantime, where can people find you?
Yeah, so on the Instagrams, you can find me under Vermilion Herbals. That's Vermillion. So there's a double L in Vermilion Herbals, or Molly McClellan Magic. And then I also have my website, which is vermillionherbals.com. That's pretty much where I'm at these days. I don't have a TikTok for herbs yet. I just just like every time I think about it, I'm like, oh, I should do that. And then I'm
It's
just
just
too busy
one more thing, right?
just too busy romping out in the forest to like be like, oh, I should have videoed that.
Oh yeah, you'll get there. You'll get there, I'm sure of it. Or not.
Or not.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being here. We can't wait to see more in September in the Ritual Society. And in the meantime, take a look at all of Molly's Instagrams and website and everything like that. And then we will see you again in September.
Sounds good. I'm super excited to teach and give you more herbal goodness about vinegars.
Can't wait. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks so much. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.